Are you ready for another UFO video? Today, we're going to go through this epic interview of Mario Woods with Jesse Michels. Now, this is Mario, okay? I'm going to go through. We're going to play some clips here, friends. So basically, man, what an epic story. So Mario, he was a US Air Force security responder, and he worked at a nuclear launch facility, I think. And it's at Ellsworth Air Force. So I'm actually going to look it up right now so we get an idea. So it's the Ellsworth Air Force Base. Shout out to everybody out there. This is like some zoom up stuff there. So this is where it worked, okay? Now, what happened was, okay, so there was a routine missile site operation, okay? And one night, checking it out, it was like 9 o'clock. And he had this guy also worked with him named Michael Johnson. You're going to remember that name as well. And pretty much what happens is this giant UFO appears. Okay? It was like this orb that appears in the light. And so, funny, what he does is he gets the light and he starts like flicking the light off to the UFOs. He goes on, off, like that, on, off, on, off. And they're just screwing around. And then what actually happens is, a minute later, the UFO did it back. The UFO went like, it's kind of funny, right, how he describes it as well. On, off, on, off, on, off. And they just beam it back. Okay, so they're screwing around with him. That's the funniest part about this stuff, right? Because what you actually find is, friends, all these UFO, UAP, Mr. Alien, extraterrestrials, wherever they're coming from, they're actually like tricksters. They have a sense of humor. They're massive trolls. They're literally just playing with humans. That's an interesting part about all these stories, commonalities as well. So basically, on, off, on, off, on, off. And where does this story lead? Well, they end up going investigating it. And pretty much, he gets abducted. Him and Mr. Michael Johnson. Okay, so this is just an AI-generated image of him pretty much at night. Okay, I'm just going to let you hear a bit about the night of the incident, so we'll just get warmed up. So let's go have a listen to Mr. Mario Woods.
Uploaded aircraft, B-52s, and they often flew sorties or test runs across the prairies at night.
So he just in the beginning of this interview, he explains how, you know, there's tests and stuff going on here, and like, you know, there's nuclear launches, like some really, really high weapon level stuff are pretty much going around here, right? So now we're going to go through the part. He's basically telling his friend, hey, come on out here. There's UFO pretty much blinking out at us. Check it out.
You got to see this, hoping it would still be there when I went outside. So he comes outside. I said, hold on right there. We walked about 20, 25 feet. And I said, look at that. You see that? He goes, yeah. I said, I just flashed the lights at that thing and it flashed back at me. And he just looked at me as in disbelief. So I said, stay right here. And I ran in there real fast. And I said, hey, Bill, you got to come see this thing. Because he and we went back a ways and we knew each other pretty well.
It's kind of funny. That's how always these things start so innocent, yes? So then it continues, right? They get an alert at 12:15.
TV off. Nation was a different place then, believe me. Was in a different place then. And I guess it was about 12:15 when, as I was sitting down, I think I was looking at a book or something, I hear the alert phone in the flight security controller's office go off. And that's the phone that's directly connected to the launch control people downstairs, 2 officers downstairs. And it sounds like, and it rings until you pick it up. You got to snatch it off the wall. And of course, Bill Holloman did that. And I hear him saying, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. Sit for November 5, which is a 2-pronged alarm. It's an above ground and a below ground sensor that has been affected. And as I said, the temperature was between 9 and 13 degrees that night. So it was cold, sat on my long johns, fatigue pants.
I think it was real middle of winter. You can see, right, this guy's like really high level oriented detail, man. This happened almost like 50 years ago. So then he goes outside his little facility thing with some dude. They get in a car, they start driving around, and then they see this.
That was about 10 feet in the air, directly on top of that blast door. That was the size of a Walmart building. This thing was as big as this building you're in right here. It was huge, and it was a sphere. It had an energy source that moved around it like like you'd see pictures of the sun, how it's just like boiling. I don't want to call it plasma, but I don't know what really to call it. But there were no tail sections, no portholes. There were no thrusters. There was no leading edges of any kind, no wings, tail section, nothing that we would associate anything in the air with. It was a complete sphere, but on a magnitude that is just hard to even comprehend.
As you know, I'm always on.
So in this next section, friends, he says he's going to pull up at a gate and there's going to be a blue light. And trust me, this happens like in every single story. It's so common, okay? This light comes, just fully paralyzes him. Let's go.
Right at that cattle gate. And immediately upon doing so, it was as if a light came down that just about blew my eyeballs out of my head. It just, you could literally almost see the veins behind your eyelids. It was as if, I don't know what kind of energy that was, but whatever was released or put down our way just completely almost disabled you just from the brightness. It was like living in a welder's light for a few moments. And then the atmosphere just vacated. Couldn't breathe. Literally could not get a breath of air. Now, I don't know if that was from my excitement. I don't know if it was from adrenaline. I'm 23 years old. I was in excellent shape. I could flat foot 25 miles in full combat dress and smoke a cigarette at the end of it. It didn't bother me a bit. Literally, I was in that kind of shape.
Wow.
And I was just so taken. Michael Johnson, I never remember him looking up at the thing. But for me, I was at a 45-degree angle, and I'm looking directly out his window, and part of the back window, this is an F-150 Ford pickup truck, a 1975 or 76, I can't remember which, but the square body type pickup truck with Western mirrors on the sides of them, 2-wheel drive vehicles. And the only thing I knew to do was to ask for relief. And where did that come from? I have no idea where that thought or impulse came from.
You pray to God or Jesus or just relief generically?
I think he was in there, and I just asked for relief from what I was experiencing to breathe, because I didn't think I was going to be able to take another breath of air. And I grabbed my flashlight, which I've gotten ridiculed before. It was an aluminum black 3D cell flashlight. I think it was made in Japan. I'm not sure, but it was a great tool, and they just started making.
In this next part, friends, yeah, so remember, he's in his little pickup truck. His blue light basically paralyzed him. Now, this is, this story is very common. It is quite a lot of abductions. This happens, okay? So, Mr. UFO and the ships, they've shined this light out. What he's noticed is it's like dead silent everywhere. This is very, very common. A lot of abductions out here. So pretty much, if you kind of reverse engineer it, mystery UFO dudes, what they can do is they can basically put a bubble out, and inside this bubble, time stops. But it's still like going out there in the world. So in your little time bubble, time's going to go out normally, but actually by the end of the story, he's missing for 5.5 hours. Okay, but you got to imagine, you got to think about this. This is nuclear weapons grade level US Army stuff. They have to go into a terror of panic in terms of the US military if they've never seen this before, but they don't. Because they're like, wait a minute. We have guys literally disappearing for 5.5 hours and there's nuclear weapons here. This is like high alert. This is our highest level offense, which, obviously they've got higher, but they don't tell the public. So you get to see this is very, very serious stuff out here. Now, in this car, Dario, okay, so he says Michael Johnson, the guy next to him, he's got his hands on the wheel. And what he says is his hands on the wheel and he won't respond. He says the guy's literally just looking out the window, his hands on the wheel. He goes, he's tried to push him. He talks to me. He goes, hey dude, are you all right? Are you all right? He's literally pokes. He puts his finger in his ear, he says, like deep in his ear. He tries to shake him, and he put his finger under his nostrils. The guy's still breathing. He's breathing. He goes, he's got a heartbeat, and his hands, he goes, his hands are gripped so firmly onto this steering wheel, he can't even move it up. He said actually, if he had gripped something that hard, I feel like it would tear something up. Now, I'm not going to show you what ends up happening by the end of the story, okay? So he was in a hypnosis, Michael Johnson. The guy disappears for like years, pretty much. He actually still hasn't seen him today. But what actually happens is, so shortly after this incident, they meet up a few weeks later. Michael Johnson was getting fingered in the ear by him, and he was actually conscious. So he could actually feel and hear everything. He just couldn't act. Do you want to know something interesting as well? Very common UFO abductions, okay? Little UFO lands in a ship, sometimes in a field, in a farm. This happened to guys in Argentina, South America, in England, Scotland, Ireland, stuff. All these UFO sightings. So they'll come out, they'll land. Someone's like, hey, you don't belong on this earth. And there's been one incident where these, like, obviously egg-shaped UFO comes out. Two little beings come out. They come out, look at the ship. And then the guy seeing the abduction, he's like, hey. He's like, what are you doing? And then they look at him, and in one story, they have like this wand, and then just go beep. They just point the wand at the guy, and I remember that the guy told the story. He's like, he literally just like froze. He just couldn't do anything. It's kind of funny, like aliens go beep. They just point this little wand at him, and they're just like totally frozen. They can't do anything, and then just get back in their ship and just fly away. Okay, like, oh crap! Look at this. So friends, as you see more of these stories, you can almost like, you can once again reverse engineer it too. We've got, I guess, buttons in our brains that certain waves, electromagnetic or whatever, can just push it. It activates fear. There's one that actually activates sexual tension. There's one that activates, obviously, the fear. There's one that can make you feel good. And that's actually common stuff as well. When people have been struck by fear, so a lot of abduction stories, when they see like, big bug eyes or giant bug and stuff ahead, they're like, oh, like when I look at the picture now, it's scary, but at the time I felt calm. So you can obviously kind of tell like, oh, you must have been under some sort of like hypnosis thing, like, hey, don't have any fear. I know this is not something that you're used to seeing. So that's actually what's happening with Dario, right? So this guy's frozen, all right? And what actually happens is, it's awesome. If you want to listen to this interview, man, it goes for 2.5 hours, but he basically... they get out and they get abducted, and he sees these beings that he's drawn, and this is what they look like. This is exactly what they look like. Now, what he said is he saw these two, obviously, little grey aliens. What we saw, the little greys. Shout out to PTGC, the alien ecosystem on Pulse Chain. That's funny. The two little grey aliens. But then he said there was like a big one, what they call the tall greys. I guess these ones are little androids, and then this bigger one is probably, I don't know, even a big android, or not exactly sure, obviously. But he actually said this one kind of scared him. I don't know why. Maybe because it was taller. Okay, but this is very, very common. What they call this, the greys and the tall greys. And there's obviously different depictions out here about how they look like. Various head sizes and stuff out here. Various eyes. Yes, that's pretty much it. So yeah, this is, I guess, there's a lot of these 3D renders making them look like little 3D and things out here. But yeah, so that's pretty much that's what he saw. Now he's in a state they call like catatonic state. Would be like he can't move. They're in the missing time bubble, and he gets abducted. Obviously, but pretty much what ends up happening is it's not like they go, "Hey, here's my hand. Let's go take you somewhere nice." He just literally out of nowhere they walk past and it just goes blank, and then he just said he doesn't know where he is at this point anymore. He goes, it's just black for like infinite distance. He has just no idea what everything is. He can see some tall white thing. He doesn't know what the hell he's looking at. So it's very, very hard to describe. But actually, interesting. During this time, do you remember when he was in the truck with Michael Johnson? When he was fingering Michael Johnson's ear, he actually did. He was actually fingering Michael Johnson's ear. He's like, "Hey, are you still alive?" He gets a call from his base, the radio base, and they're like, "Hey, where are you? You know what I mean? Missing for hours." And the guy's like, I don't know how to tell you where I am. I'm kind of like somewhere in this place. And do you want to know what ends up happening? Mr. Alien, so in their car, 5 hours later, they get dropped off in a place like 3 to 5 kilometers away from where they disappeared. And this is a cool part as well. Mr. Aliens dropped them on this track where it's one lane and you can only drive out. And what he said is when they were like woke up again, okay, when they were back to it, he said, if you look outside, there's not enough room to do a U-turn for the car. So basically, you look down, you fall off this cliff. It was so tight. And he said when they drove out, there was no tracks. It was basically, obviously, like just teleported out. There was no tracks and it was snow. And they're like, hey, like if we drove in here, there should be like the trail coming in. But there's only enough room to like go one way for 3 kilometers or whatever on this tiny little track. But, so that's what happened. So he has his missing time and stuff out here. But the interesting what happens is I'm going to tell you a bit what happens before we even get to this base part. So to give you some like juice as to what happens next, I'll play some Cranky G bizarre music. What happens is he ends up going to do a hypnosis. Okay, now hypnosis, I thought it was hocus pocus. It's actually not. Hypnosis, somehow it can like lower your brain waves or something, get into a deep, relaxed state. And then you can actually start digging into memories. And Bob Lazar's done it. Many, many, many people have done it. They find what they call repressed memories. And a lot of people who've been abducted, they're able to like dig and dig and dig and dig and dig, and they can discover a lot of things. Travis Walton, a lot of people have done that. Now, Mario actually does do that. He explains later on. I'll give you the juice as well, because it takes a long time to explain stuff. Basically, he ended up, see, he couldn't remember much at this point, but after the hypnosis stuff, 2 big sessions, there were things done to him when he was abducted. So he went onto the ship, and he said when it was inside, it looked like a beehive. He goes, it looked like a beehive, and he goes, there was energy outputs from everywhere. He said there was just energy, buzzing energy, and there were all these little grey aliens and working little beehive things just walking, moving around. He goes, by the way, they didn't even walk. They all just like floating around. None of them actually walked. So that was interesting. Also, they took him and they did like tests on him. And it was interesting. They said when he was being shown around in the ship, and he was like in like this floating bag, but it was just a field. There was no like bag. It was kind of like, it's kind of like if you were, I guess, in a bag without the sheet around. It's kind of like this like little floating bathtub or something, just like shown around. And he basically, when he was in there, before they did the test, they went up to him. So the big grey alien like grabbed his hand, and I think he said they just kept like pumping this message into him. They said, "Do not fear, do not fear, do not fear." And he said it was like vibrating through his whole body. He goes, "I've never felt anything like it." He's like this. He goes, he didn't even know what it was, but I think like Jesse Michael says, "Hey, I guess that's telekinesis. It's speaking to you telepathically." He goes, "Yeah, it must have been something," but he's like, he's never heard language like this where it's like it's so crystal clear. But you gotta understand, friends, it is telekinesis, telepathy. That's what Vitalik does. Vitalik, when he made Ethereum, because when I think about it, when I speak to you, there's a message in my brain, and then I've got to decode it, and then the words got to come out of my mouth. It's got to go through electronics and through the air. Then you've got to hear it through your ear, and then your brain's got to process it. You see, like this long trail, and it can become inefficient, right? Because there's information, it's got to go through. It takes time. I guess this is like a direct communication thing. It's like pure knowledge. Also makes you think maybe some stories in the Bible, ancient stories, that's actually what's happened. People have heard stuff, that's actually what they mean. It's not someone actually yelling from a cloud. It's like they hear it like from within. So it makes you think. So that's the stuff I remember from his like his own hypnosis, right? He sees all these things. And by the way, if you're curious as well, maybe I'll get through it and show you a bit. He actually gets his physical test done on him, and they puncture something in his arm and his legs. Okay, actually, and this is a very, very faint picture. They've actually got still his picture. He has these 3 1 centimeter distance indentations here, which he still has today. It's kind of funny.
See him?
Sure.
That's his arm.
Right there.
Yes.
Right there. Let's had these socks on.
Wow.
Blood up.
Wow.
You can see it.
Wow. Yeah, those look, I mean, just like perfectly vertically aligned.
Well, I had a doctor who's no longer with us.
But like, so
Yeah, it's kind of funny how all these things play out, right? And there's a section here, right? It's called Aftermath at the Base. And what it does is, I'll just play for it a bit.
There. And it's a little north of November Control, and it's sitting back off the road about 4.5 miles. So it sits way back up on the prairie, and I honestly had never been there before, nor knew about it. And so they started banging me with questions and what did you see? What did you do? You know, how did you do this? You communicated this. You didn't report this. You know, what was wrong with the site? Just all these things were coming at me, and I was answering every single one of them. And believe me, there was a bunch of questions.
You want to laugh as well? They mentioned in here, there were these, apparently on these nuclear test sites, friends, they've actually got the numbers here. There are 800 people on at all times. And if you add it up, there are like thousands of reports all around America of people who have experienced similar stuff. They not just direct abductions, right? So, but they see stuff, weird stuff happens. There's actually been documented stuff. Remember the friends, there was even the US Army guy, literally we have the journal entry, underground, a UFO just appears and they fly over the launch and they literally just turn on the launch and they screw everyone around. And they actually mentioned it in here as well. It's actually pretty common. It's kind of funny. It's common now. It's done many times. Mr. UFO dudes appear. They just fly over like our little launch pads and they go beep, 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 beep. They just go, hey, we're going to launch it. And they just disappear. And they basically flip everyone out. And it gets within like 15 seconds of launching, then it stops. Okay, so how do you interpret that? Some people interpret that as like, oh, well, you know, it's maybe they're screwing around. But other people, it doesn't take a genius to figure it out. They're like, oh, maybe they're hinting like, hey, little humans, maybe stop trying to blow yourselves up. Maybe there's another way of you can get energy. That's another way to think about it. Of course, US government ain't going to report on this stuff because, like, it's funny. One government wing will say, no, they don't want to report on it because the government is too scared of how the public's going to react when we have to admit that these guys are more powerful than us and stuff like this. So that's one angle. I don't know, man. I don't know. The other angle, which I'm more leaning towards, is they don't want to admit that they've got some deep underground military bases where they've got a lot of their tech that's been donated to them. They're like, yeah, I don't want to tell China. By the way, China and Russia know. China and Russia know. They just not know any advances in America. So like, I don't want to tell these guys how we did anti-gravity. I don't want to tell them what we know. I don't want to tell them what things are possible because I don't trust them. And you know what? To be honest, at this point, I don't blame them. I don't blame them. Like, imagine the city panic, world panic. If we're like, okay, maybe someone on this earth has made a anti-gravity nuclear bomb, and nothing we can do to stop. You know what I mean? Like, it's not pleasant to hear that. But also, you get some you get a bit of solace, which is like a bit of comfort, knowing that whenever we try to do some really, really nasty stuff or planning it, whatever, there's been some intervention from Mr. Aliens. They're like, don't do that thing. It's kind of like if you've given a hand grenade to the baby. You know what I mean? Like, hey, don't pull the pin. It was a very interesting part as well. He talks about almost an out-of-body experience.
I thought I was dying. I said, I guess this is how you die. And every time I closed my eyes, I felt as if I went, without going anywhere, I felt as if I kept going lower within myself. And I knew that there was a clear channel to exit me through my feet.
Mm.
I knew there was. It was a map. There was something there that I could leave if I so chose to do so.
Mm.
And it scared me to death. It's literally scared me to death, man.
So yeah, I don't blame him because this is in the 70s. There's no internet. Okay, friends, they haven't even invented Super Mario yet. It's the 70s, man. They got no idea about like games and all these other worlds. Even their television channels, they'd stop at like 10 or 11 at night and just go blank. It's like, okay, no more TV for the whole country. You got to get up, wake up in 6 hours, TV starts again, which is funny. There was this interesting thing I looked at, astral projection. Actually, a lot of you know about it. Some of you guys told me about it. Astral projection is, believe it or not, friends, you can actually train for this. I actually looked it up. You can actually train for it. It's not, I guess, worth most of it, but I guess you can do it. So you can listen to some stuff that does something to your brainwaves. Just it temples your brainwaves down. With practice, you can practice like, it's hard to explain, right? I guess almost your 3D vision, your third eye, you can basically start to see yourself in a 3D room. So you can look at yourself around the room. Now, this is common in hospital stories. Whenever somebody passes out on the operating table and they like momentarily die, they start to float up. like many stories. They can actually see items. There's been one story. There's actually been stories of people, NDEs, near-death experiences, where there's one story. Someone's blind at birth. They passed away momentarily, near-death experience, and I can't remember exactly where they were, but it might have been on an operating table, like in a hospital. So they're blind at birth. They don't know what anything looks like. And when they could float, they floated up and they could see stuff on cabinets. And they could see, oh, is that what is that like what a folder is? What's that color thing? Okay, so I forgot who did it, but the person's name, but it was something like amazing, like someone who has never seen anything from the day they're born, literally born blind. When they had the near death, they started floating up. They could see their own body, and then like on top of the up top, like on the top shelves of the operating room, they could see like utensil things. You know what I mean? So it was also most fascinating, friends. You remember when I sliced my hand? The nurses had been like, oh yeah, they said, oh yeah, this happens all the time. They go, oh yeah, whenever someone passes away, the light goes on and off in the room. It's like whatever. I was what? Whoa. You're telling me just a random civilian, you see all this spooky stuff of people dying and switches going on and off and stuff. Yeah. It's like it happens every day, which I found fascinating too. Now, if you're in the UFO community, there's actually this thing is this is amazing. So the UFO community, there is a character named Richard Doty. Okay, now Richard Doty, okay, there's a movie made, Mirage Men, about him. So this guy, friends, he worked for the Coconut Intelligence Agency. Pretty much what he did. Oh wow, that's him back in the day. Okay, so what he did was, oh man, typical government, evil. So there's a guy named Paul Benowitz. Unfortunately, he passed away. This is him. I'm gonna get you to watch a clip, but I'm just gonna quickly give you a rundown. Paul Benowitz, he was next to, I think, like a NASA launch or some sort of like launch thing, and he was watching like advanced, like UFO tech. He was watching some like US Air Force stuff. And he thought, so he was watching it from like his cabin, and he's watching it through like, you know, the telescope, and he thought he was watching UFOs. So Richard Doty, what he did was, he went, knocked on his door, and they found that, hey, what are you doing, bro? He's like, oh man, I found these UFOs. They're being launched over here. Now, he didn't know the guy was CIA. And then what they did was they did PsyOps on Paul Benowitz. They made him go crazy, and he basically offed himself. Yes, he squirted himself in the head with a water pistol. Poor guy, rest in peace, offed himself because they made him think he was going crazy. Okay, they basically started feeding him information. Like they were pretending to him, oh yeah, it really is UFOs. Well, it's really just American Army stuff out here. But yeah, I'm gonna let you just listen to this. So this is nuts. And by the way, so what's Richard Doty got to do with this? Well, Mario Woods here, when he went back to the base and they were testing his medical stuff and they were testing like his ears, his gums, hey, like is there any, because this has happened all the time. They basically have a procedure now. Oh, you got abducted? Okay, check him for radiation poisoning, check him for this and stuff. They don't even get like a spooked at all. Like this happened so many times in the government, right? They just like zip it up and they seal it away. So one of the men, so I think it was like 4 or 5 guys came in to see him, superiors. One of them was Richard Doty. But it was like 7 years before they said he went deep into the corruption of like the CIA, the massive PsyOps. So it's kind of funny how this story maps out. Just have a listen.
You enter the room, go directly to his desk, heels together at attention, report in, Senior Airman was reporting as ordered, sir, And he told me at ease, but he didn't tell me I could sit down. I never forget that. I just thought it was strange, and he had to know how long I'd been up. I mean, I was weakened, if I may say. I just felt really weakened in a different state, not knowing what I experienced. I was still wet from an hour and 15 minutes ago from the sink, So it was really strange. And he asked me some questions, and he said, I remember him saying, sounds as if you've had an interesting evening or night or something like that. And I said, yes, sir. And I looked to my left, and there's a total of 5 people in that room. There's the deputy base commander, who I don't remember his name, but next to him was a man in a gray tweed suit with a hat, and the hat was under his arm. Then there was a Captain Jack Reed, OSI. Next to him was this new OSI guy named Rick Doty.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, and do you have any speculation as to who the guy in the gray tweed suit was?
I was never introduced to him nor told his name. And I only found out Jack Reed was a captain in OSI. He was the lead OSI officer at Ellsworth at that time. And through an email that Rick Doty sent me after about 5 years of trying to get him to answer my emails or talk to me, because the first time I saw him was on Ancient Aliens. And I said, I know that guy. He was at my debrief.
I was a counterintelligence officer for the Air Force Office of Special Investigation.
I was personally fascinated by the fact that Richard Doty had been involved in the aftermath of Mario's case. I knew about Doty because of a great book called Project Beta by Greg Bishop. Doty was an Air Force counterintelligence agent, basically tasked with performing a psychological operation on an innocent researcher named Paul Benowitz, who had seen an exotic craft at Kirtland Air Force Base. Doty convinced Benowitz that he was in touch with aliens, even receiving signals on his computer. This eventually drove Benowitz into psychiatric hospitalization. So the fact that Doty was part of Mario's debrief is fascinating, seems very important, and requires follow-up by some brave souls.
And up to that point,
So isn't that scum, friends? So the government, they were testing advanced UFO tech. So the government had reverse engineered. They're testing their own ones. It wasn't actually aliens, but it is alien tech. And Paul Benowitz is checking it out. And they obviously they try stuff. They're like, hey, oh, here it is, the aliens. Do you think they're talking to us? We should get you to do the operations. They basically sent him mad. And they basically, they screwed around a lot with him. I think literally they made him think it was going literally insane. Did a lot of stuff to screw around with him. It's actually disgusting. But yeah, that Richard Doty, friends, as well. This is crazy. So he actually hangs out at the UFO conferences, but he's got a very bad reputation. It's very, very, very bad. So I think they've called him out on it, mislead the public. Oh man, if people just know, that's why. Crypto's like the tiniest little thing, man. This is what they actually do. This is real government stuff. Now, Richard Doty, you can actually listen to a lot of his stuff. He's got clips out there. There's a lot of it feels like it's controlled disinformation. Like he says, there's 6 races of aliens. There's 6 of them. I'm like, how do you know 6, bro? How do you know 6? Why not 6 million or 6 times infinity, right? There's a lot of things. There's been some stories where they seem a bit fantastical, but you just don't know with these, because one of the things, even Joe Rogan, everyone's onto this now. One of the strategies from the Coconut Intelligence Agency and all this information, Mossad, everything else, when the truth is out there, they spread a lot of fakes alongside with it. So have you noticed how whenever there's a UFO sighting, all of our YouTube and Twitter feeds, a lot of the fake ones get put out? Yeah, where do you think it's coming from? It's always coming from the government. They've got their own methods to distribute. Every single time there's UFO stuff, they put all the fake ones out. CGI, and they look really obviously fake. Oh, let's put a CGI thing out here. Now, of course, some of them's probably like someone in their backyard and stuff, but there's just too many. There's too many like fake, weird things that are being put out. So it's kind of like, it's trying to get everybody to be like, oh, like that's what they do, right? So there's one real one, and there's like, 10 fake ones that annoy everyone. It's a part of their strategy. Now, do you remember that guy, Michael Johnson?
Getting back to that, about 2.5, 3 weeks later, we're living in, it's called Haynesway Apartments. They're still there today in Rapid City. I get this, bar none, kid you not. When that knock came at that door, I knew it was Michael Johnson.
Precognition. But yes, do you remember him? Michael Johnson was the guy who was frozen and was in a catatonic state, but he could eventually, so what ended up happening is he eventually gets in touch with him. This is 3 weeks after the incident. And he goes over to him and his wife, and interesting, Mario asks him, hey, do you remember anything on that night? He goes, dude, I remember everything. They could finally talk. He's like, but you weren't talking to me. He goes, I was fully aware. I couldn't react. I was fully paralyzed. So what he got him to do was they both drew events of what they saw. This is Mario Woods' what he saw in the orb. He saw like this big black sphere Okay, and I think the next picture is as well. This is what it looked like just a big orb thing just hanging out. I guess this is him looking at the path out here. But it gets weird because this was their first talk of their abduction alien experience, okay? And after this point, Michael Johnson disappears. Vanished. And actually, Mario knows the state he's from, the age he was. He was unmarried at the time. He was 2 months older than him or something. He knows all this other stuff about him, and he's trying to find him still today. Whatever happened to him? Whatever happened? Did the guy go mad? Did he say too much? The guy fully disappeared. So maybe we can get in contact with him. I don't know. It'd be pretty old by now, but hopefully we can get some conclusion to this story. So yeah, this was him mentioning the hypnotic regression.
Chip in and out of there.
And you received a hypnotic regression about all of this, right?
I did. I certainly did. Bob Upton did my first one, and Yvonne Smith did my second one.
What came out?
Well, the inside of the craft.
What was that like?
I've got some drawings of it, but what I saw or what I experienced in my mind was not all pleasant. And these were the one that was messing with me was a very tall one that was doing the one thing to me, whereas in regression number 2, I found out that Michael was laying opposite to me, and there was one of the short ones or small ones between us both, and he was facing one direction, I was facing the opposite direction, kind of like that would be. And
what were they doing? Were they taking samples or?
Well, the tall one did something to my wrist, and I kept telling him how to hurt me, and he said something, we don't hurt you or something like that. I don't remember. I'd have to go back and listen to it again.
Yeah, so it's actually very detailed. It's kind of funny, man. A lot of these stories are actually very, very, very similar. That's what happens. Do you know what's cool, Vince? After this experience, he says, in his party, Mario says, after this experience, I wanted to go discover the pyramids. Totally random. He says, I got to go learn about ancient Egypt pyramids, about how they're made or whatever. It's just weird. Ancient. Why that? He goes, he never had an interest in them before. But this happened. He goes, I got to find out how they did all that stuff. And maybe some people say, oh, it's kind of in the same field, but perhaps as well, there's a bit more to it in terms of now this is kind of he's downloaded something in his head and probably from the same common source pool, right? We're all downloading information from some sort of common node, and we don't even know where's this information node come from. We don't even know where it is, by the way. So we can't even test for it. We can't test this information source node. Maybe one day we'll be able to. Actually, no, we kind of can't test for it. I'll tell you about that just shortly. So you have this other common source. Who puts information into that source pool? We don't know. Who can put information or remove it? Okay. Now, you're probably interesting. Like Simon, you just dropped the bomb. How can you test for this common information source pool of mind link for humans? Well, they've actually done that, friends. What? So smart cookie scientists. What they've done is they give 1,000 people a crossword and they time the average length of time it takes to complete the crossword. Yeah. 1,000 people. And then they give them a complex, difficult one. What they do is the next day they test it on a new random 1,000 people. And what they've discovered is this is fascinating, okay? Those first 1,000 people, they have a certain time. Let's say it takes 27 seconds, okay? The average, okay? When the next separate 1,000 people out there randomly come to do it, it's slightly faster. Which is it's slightly faster. How about that? So maybe it's 26 seconds. And that they've done it multiple times. Over and over and over again. So it's basically humans learn it. It's downloading our common knowledge, and these people can source it, but they're not even thinking about it. Yeah. By the way, this test, I'll go through this in other videos and stuff out here. This test has also been done on monkeys, where there's been the potato drop experiment in Japan. 2 separate islands. They drop a potato. One of the monkeys cleans the potato on the beach and it starts eating it. And what they noticed is when a certain critical mass of the monkeys on the island learn about how to clean the potato on one island, the other island automatically start doing it, even though they're separated by like 2 islands and they're not talking to each other. So there's like this mind link out here with monkeys. They've also done it with the lighters of monkeys. So they put 10 monkeys in like I forgot the exact number. I put 10 monkeys into separate rooms. They bring up a lighter to the they bring a lighter to the first monkey. They burn it literally because the monkey doesn't know what's happening. They bring a lighter. Lighter comes on. They burn the monkey. Monkey goes wild. Then they go do it to the second one, the third one, and they're in separate rooms, right? And then I think eventually after a certain number of monkeys done, after that, they just show the light. So the scientist enters the room. He shows the lighter to the monkey. The monkey starts flipping out. Okay, so there's some sort of mind link out there. They can't communicate to each other through these concrete wall rooms. Okay, so this is the type of stuff we're learning as humans. Do you want to know something interesting from here as well, friends, what they speak about? Actually, I'll let you just listen to it for a bit. It's pretty cool.
Be kind of celestial ascent chambers that were stargates to another world.
Sure.
And maybe things were getting kind of gnarly or cataclysmic and they were portals to elsewhere.
So what's he actually talking about, portals? Did you know, I did not know this until today. There's a movie called StarGate. Okay, StarGate, was funded by the US Army. Now, we know what the US Army does and the deep state to teach humans and to kind of like show them what things are possible and stuff out here. They just release this information out here through the media and Hollywood. So what is StarGate, friends? StarGate, in the movie, the pyramids have a literal portal on top of them. That's what the pyramids are used for. Okay, they're actually energy sources. You can go, basically you warp drive to like another part of the universe. That's the premise of StarGate. So it does make you think, why did the US Army fund millions and millions of dollars to make this random movie to tell us what the pyramids were used for? They were actually basically used to teleport stuff, or this warp drive energy things out here. That's interesting as well, right? And last but not least, I want to tell you something. So, you know Dario here? There is a book called Communion, okay, by Whitley Strieber. Whitley's an awesome guy, by the way. He got actually abducted, friends. Whitley, the guy who made it, he's got his own YouTube channel here. I'll show you him as well. So Whitley, man, I feel so sorry for the guy. Whitley was the guy. I think he got anal probed. Like, I think he got actually, I think it was him. I can't remember, but he was like the first guy, like decades ago. I think South Park pretty much did. You know the UFO episodes? I got to show you. So South Park UFO episodes. I think they're modeled after him. Like, I'm sorry, man. You took the hit. You took the hit hard. Okay. So when I was watching South Park as a kid, I had no idea there's actually like real stories. Like at South Park, Cartman getting butt probed. Here are the gray aliens. I had no idea this is actually real. This is actually real stuff. So Whitley, very, very gentle guy. Him and his wife. He actually talks to them a lot. They communicate to him. He's got a room. They come out and they talk to him. They've given him a couple of instructions. It sounds weird, but they're kind of like, there's been sort of like this connection part out here. He made this book. Now, you know this picture of them, of the gray alien? Well, Dario right here said when he came across this book, he just stared at this picture for 2 hours before even opening the front page. He goes, this is exactly what they look like. He goes, this is what it was. They were just staring deep into my soul. That was it. So it's fascinating, right? This book out here. Yeah, so that's another thing, right? So Whitley, this is one last thing. This is interesting, yeah. Whitley, the guy who made the book I just showed. So Whitley, when he first came across them, he said to them like, hey, Mr. Alien dude, you guys, why do you guys look so ugly? Yeah, why do you like look so unpleasant? And they said to him, like, how do you know you won't look like this one day too? Maybe one day you will. It's basically that. So when you hear stuff like that, you think, oh, well, is that some sort of super fiction thing? Maybe. There are many, many accounts where people get abducted and they go, hey, Mr. Alien, teach me more. Where are you from? To show me like what you're about and stuff. And always a common response. They go, we can't kind of explain it to you right now. We're from another time. You just won't get it yet. So it's kind of like they're playing with us monkeys, kind of explain. But basically the implication is they're what we call extra temporal, which is future. They're from the future. They've figured out how to travel back in time. You know what I actually found, friends, in the science, traveling back in time is cool and fine, but traveling into the future, mate, that's the tough part. I don't know how you can actually do that, but yeah, that's pretty much what it comes down to. But does that mean we're constantly traveling back in time? Is that what happened? So that's what we look like in the future. Do you want to know where this extra temporal theory comes from? It's actually fascinating, right? Where it comes from. So Joe Rogan, I think actually Joe Rogan had this mentioned as well. Well, you see chimps, friends, chimps, they actually look like chimps, yeah, chimps and apes and whatever, look like chimps. However, what they've done is scientists, they found this really strange, there's this strange pattern, anthropology or whatever. Look at like all the, humans were like 50,000, 100,000 years ago, the bones. What they found is that, let's say you go back, you find this skeleton bone, okay? You look at what the baby looks like. You have a look at the baby. And the baby of the ape or the chimp is actually what they're eventually going to become, like thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of years later. It's a window into what they look like in the future. So baby chimps, it's kind of funny, friends. Like, our ancestors, they look like what you and I look like today. Like baby chimps look like us, okay? They're walking straight. They literally look like actual look humans, the mini humans, middle adult humans. But then you want to look at our babies today. And our babies today, look at these cute little babies. Okay, if you think about it, friends, look at our babies today. Our babies today, they look like the freaking aliens on the ships. That's wild. They actually do. Okay? They've got big heads. They've got big eyes. And their bodies are small. That's nuts. That's babies. The little babies. Now, here's cute little babies everywhere. That's crazy. See this? They've got big heads, big eyes. It's wild. It's such a crazy thing they've discovered, but our brains just can't figure it out, all this stuff here. We understand we're dealing with a lot of these a lot of this information and knowledge. Maybe we're just not allowed to learn that much up until this point. But I think it's pretty cool, right? I hope to see this guy in Congress, Dario, out here. He had a first-hand account and all these experiences out here. See, you listen to this, like, this to the power of the internet, right? Like, man, if you had to go through this 50 years ago, good luck, man. Everyone thinks you're literally psycho. But because you sit here, we're like, oh, wow, I've gone through 30 abduction stories and they all say the same thing. Different story. There's a light that comes. Different. They look different in the aliens. Time stops here. They got some radiation things. Like there's commonalities out here. I wonder where it all leads though. Disclosure. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe. Catch you in the next one.